The Serpentis Corporation is a cutting-edge research, development and manufacturing corporation specialized in biochemistry and the production and distribution of high-technology pharmaceuticals. To put it bluntly, Serpentis is one of the foremost manufacturers and smugglers of illegal drugs in New Eden, concentrating primarily on the lucrative Gallente Federation market, ships neutral boosters and other drugs across the cluster in vast quantities every day. As a major source of illegal drugs and the crime associated with them, the Serpentis are high on the priority list of criminal organizations monitored by law enforcement in New Eden. While the Serpentis network uncovered in the core empires are more or less readily dealt with by the authorities, the one advantage that the Serpentis Corporation holds over many other drug syndicates is its control of the Phoenix constellation system in the outer region of Fountain. Over the years, the Serpentis have established many subsidiary facilities and installations in the neighboring regions and the hidden folds of Dead Space. Their alliance with the Angel Cartel has brought them both additional security and a foothold in the Curse region too, where they have many manufacturings and storage stations. From the well-protected bases in Nosec space, the Serpentis are able to control a large portion of the illegal booster market with a little concern for the forces of law and order. In the early days following the development of the first neural boosters, many perfectly legal corporations researched and manufactured these new wonder drugs, hoping to build a fortune on their promise. Unfortunately for these companies, and for more than a few early adopters, it soon became clear that prolonged use of these new drugs could have bizarre and often a fatal side effect. The core empires quickly moved to ban almost all neural booster drugs, at a stroke driving this lucrative new market underground. At that time, one of the smaller booster researchers firms, named Serpentis, was owned by Gallente biochemists named Igil Serpati. The Serpati Corporation was contracted by the Gallente Federation to investigate the potential for neural boosters used in their military. When the Federation Senate later banned the boosters, Serpentis quickly collapsed, sharing the fate of almost all other companies that had invested in their booster trade. Not long after the company closed down, Igil Serpati died. Suddenly, leaderless, his family looked set for obscurity and relative poverty. The Serpati story might have ended there had it not been for the drive and determination of Igil's adopted child, Serge Salvador Serpati. The collapse of his father's company and the worsening of the family circumstances that followed marked the young Serpati for life. Evidently, the youth endured much mockery, but the experience only fired his determination to restore the Serpati's family's fortune. Preferring the name V. Salvador Serpati, and with the talent for business, the new head of Serpati family was eventually able to found his own company, taking an old form of the family name. He called it Serpentis Corporation. Serpati knew that research and development would be lucrative fields, so long as the work were sufficiently diversified to limit the risk. Over time, he maneuvered the Serpentis Corporation into a leadership position into the field of space colonization and industrialization technologies. In an echo of his father's work, space medicine became a particular field of interest to the young executive, and thus, by proxy, to his own corporation large R&D division. The Serpentis Corporation necessarily began life as a Gallente Federation-based company, but even by Gallente standards, it possessed a very cosmopolitan character from its first days, due to the way his father had been treated and his early experience in the Gallente society. Serpati became increasingly antagonistic towards the Gallente Federation, and as his corporation grew, his disdain for the Gallente reached a point where he allowed only Caldara corporations and officials access to the higher echelons of his organization. In the end, Serpati decided on a total break with the Federation and began to look for ways to escape the limits of Gallente law. At the beginning of YC-75, Serpati settled on a plan. He acquired a system in the Phoenix constellation and named it Serpentis Prime. Rapidly building an advanced space station, he transferred his core operations and began to expand his research ventures into forbidden territories. Part of Serpentis' strategy was to open his station to the inhabitants of the Fountain region, earning their support and favor. That many of these locals were criminals and outright pirates were of little concern to him. Once he had established himself, it is believed that he retrieved his father's old neural booster formulas from the family's archives and turned his research facilities over to working on them. The Serpentis Corporation was now set on a path that would lead it well beyond the confines of the law. Salvatore Serpati took great risks when he opened his station to outlaws and pirates, but he made sure to get his corporation powerful protections. In an extraordinary dangerous move, he struck a deal with the notorious Angel cartel for protection for his stations and facilities. In return, the Angels would get a cut of Serpentis' trade and access to any research breakthroughs in the Serpentis Corporation. As the Serpentis operation expanded, the Angels expanded their protection force, and over time, this deal has been so lucrative for the Angels that they have found it worthy building an entire division, the Guardian Angels, dedicated to protecting the Serpentis space. With the help of the Angel cartel, the Serpentis developed their own security forces, with Salvatore Serpati eventually able to command a powerful navy in his own right. While Serpati's fortune has steadily risen over the decades since he founded the Serpentis, the effort has not been without setbacks. Concord's Directive Enforcement Department considered Serpentis vessels fair game and offers large bounties for their destruction. The law enforcement agencies of the Gallente Federation are particularly concerned about combating the Serpentis drug and smuggling and money laundering operations in their jurisdiction. As an outlawed organization, the Serpentis Corporation is often the target of other nullsec factions or capsuleer groups. In YC-106, for instance, the Mordu Legion's mercenary corporation raided Serpentis Prime, and it's speculated to have escaped with data on several prototype technologies being researched by Serpati scientists. In its origins, a Gallente corporation, the Serpentis organization still retains a certain family resemblance to the many large and perfectly legal corporations that operates across the New Eden. It is, in fact, part of the corporate culture of the Serpentis that everyone within the organization behaves, at least outwardly, as if it's just another research and development corporation. It is standard for Serpentis executives to express shock and vigorous reproach if anyone so much as suggests that the corporation is a criminal organization involved in drug smuggling and racketeer on a grand scale. This particular play acting, carried on by people who clearly know what they're on about, takes place at every level of Serpentis Corporation, whether it's an aid to indoctrination or merely one of Salvatore Serpati's jokes is unclear. Those who earn their place by enhancing the profits of the Serpentis Corporation are infinitely more secure. A line is drawn very clear at disruptive means of advancement. Sabotage or murder of colleagues is strictly forbidden and will usually be grounds for dismissal. Very few risks the consequences, and those that do very rarely profit from their ill-judged actions. Conversely, the rewards for merited advancements in the Serpentis Corporation are very high. The corporation ensures that even low-level workers are at the very least comfortable and well paid. Managers can expect a very high standard of living, and the upper executives lives in a luxury. The most determined members of the inner circles are scattered across the Serpentis stations in the Fountain and in Curse, helping to run the Serpentis Corporation accordingly to Serpati's wishes. Perhaps, inevitably, use of drugs and neural boosters for recreational purposes and more besides is a significant aspect of Serpentis culture. While Serpati does not force any kind of no-user policy on his drug empire's employees, he does insist that the use of his products be in due moderation and not impair the efficiency of his organization. To the drug culture of the Serpentis is the extensive use of combat boosters, psychoactive drugs, by the security and the military divisions of the organization. Serpentis security troops are feared not only for their efficiency and ruthlessness, but also perhaps primarily because they commonly have all human emotions drugged out from their systems. In many respects, the Serpentis exhibit a mix of Kaldari efficiency and the Galantis curiosity, and the Minmatar's determination in much in what they do. The only major cultural influence that is given short rift by the Serpentis is the Amar. Sarpati himself considers religion a trap for the mind, and his disdain is reflected in the attitudes of his people. The Serpentis will happily stoop to using religion as a tool, as they have on several occasions in their service of peddling their pharmaceutical wares, but they have nothing but contempt for the religious habit of mind. The leadership of the Serpenti Corporation is the one and only V. Salvador Sarpati. As the founder, guiding light, and public face of Serpentis, Sarpati can be said to embody the organizations in all its aspects. Even the Blood Raider Covenant's Umir Sarikusa does not quite achieve the level of identification with his organization that the Sarpati has. For the enemies of Serpentis, the elimination of Sarpati is at the top of the list of measures they would like to be able to take against the organization. It is possible, indeed, that if this were ever achieved, Serpentis might just collapse. The prospect seems unlikely. Since Sarpati's transhuman status is unclear, most believe that he is a capsuleer or, at the very least, has clones to back himself up to such extent that assassination is practically impossible. Such is the genius of Sarpati, and so admired are his achievements and intellect within the Serpentis. For the organization's executive, managers, scientists, workers, and fighters, there is only one leader that matters. Even so, Serpentis is a large organization, and using the corporate model, Sarpati has ensured that there are competent directions at every level of his empire. While the Serpentis Corporation still relies heavily on the Angel Carter for military aid and protection, the forces of Serpentis are by no means to be dismissed. While often seen working hand in glove with the Guardian Angels, the Serpentis military carries out its own operation. The commanders and elite fighters of the Serpentis fleet are known as the Shadow Serpentis. Rumored to take a cocktail of combat drugs that deaden their emotions and heighten their aggressions, the Shadows are justly feared throughout the Serpentis sphere of influence. And here are some notable characters. Salvador Sarpati, the evil genius, as some would say, at the top of the Serpentis organization. Virg Salvador Sarpati founded the corporation and built it into the drug empire of today with absolute devotion. Preferring to be known as V. Salvador Sarpati, the leader of Serpentis is sometimes referred to as the Snake, though never in his hearing, and only by enemies, and the most daring of his servants. Truth be told, while he keeps up an appearance of disliking the nickname, Sarpati takes a rather perverse pleasure in it. Near-obsessive preoccupations with long-term schemes and mystery research projects, and his ever-present hatred of the Galanti Federation are key to understanding Sarpati. Nevertheless, the health and prosperity of the Serpentis Corporation remains of his chief concerns, all else being a means to an end for this enigmatic crime lord. Egil Sarpati, the beloved adoptive father of V. Salvador Sarpati, Egil was a brilliant Galanti biochemist who founded a startup company specializing in neural boosters. His timing proved poor, and within only a few years, the Galanti Federation, in common with other core empires, has banned the new class of drugs. The Sarpati's company collapsed, and with it began the decline of Egil Sarpati. He died relatively young and left his adoptive son, Virg Salvador, as the head of the Sarpati family. If there is one man that Sarpati still honors, it's this gentle and inquiring long-dead father. Santimua Sarpati. While Salvador Sarpati's adoptive family are a key part of his routine, one member of the Sarpati house, his sister Santimuna Sarpati, has rejected an ideal life of privilege in Serpentis Prime, along with Salvador's criminals and underworld activities. As a high-ranking member of the Servants' Sister of Eve, Santimuna mocks her brother and his criminal lifestyle at every opportunity, calling him King Serpent and Serpentis Prime his royal court. For his part, Salvador returns her contempt, calling her devotion to the sisters a meaningless collapse to quasi-religious sentimentality. But privately, Serpentis knows that the sisters are not to be underestimated, and he is careful to keep an eye on the activities on his estranged adoptive sibling. Sylphu en Diabel. While by no means a member of the Serpentis organization, Sylphu en Diabel is a useful ally for Serpentis, as her control of the Intaki syndicate guarantees its friendly relationship with his organization. They have known each other for a long time, and Diabel originally coming to an attention of Salvador due to the friendship she once had with Santimoa Serpentis. When Diabel later achieved the control of the Intaki syndicate with his Sister of Eve's aid, Serpentis saw an opportunity to establish a useful business relationship, while at the same time putting one over his sister. The two organizations mutually profited when, as it inevitably had to, the partnership emerged into public view, and the Sister of Eve and Santimona turned their backs on Sylphu en Diabel. Once again, the Snake's scheme has once again worked. Tuvan Orth. Tuvan Orth is a trusted commander in Serpentis and is responsible for the internal security of the organization. Tuvan took part in the hijacking of the Galentis Soliture class Titan FNS in YC-107. He is possibly the most wanted man in the Serpentis Corporation, next to Serpentis himself. He is reputed to be fearless, and unlike many Serpentis fighters, Tuvan is known to be exceedingly arrogant and almost as egotistical as his master. Remarkably, by all accounts, the two men get on very well with another. It is considered likely that Tuvan Orth is a capsuleer, but there is no clear evidence for this. Fasino Rund. Fasino Rund played a key role in the Serpentis takeover of the ore conglomerate in the YC-108, providing Serpentis forces with an intelligence and access from his position as an ore station administrator. For his effort, the traitor was appointed the position of Lord Admiral in the Serpentis force and assigned the role of liaison between the Serpentis Corporation and ore operations. He is not a popular figure within either Serpentis or the ore. Thank you so much for listening to this one, and if you enjoy it, then tell me that in the comments and I keep them rolling. And I'll see you guys again.